Hi, I'm Krista Arthur, and welcome to the Consilien Report. Today, we're going to be talking to Consilien's Virtual Chief Information Security Officer, James Rothman. And he's going to be sharing with us some potential security pitfalls associated with the coronavirus. I know the coronavirus is really in the news, and we're thinking about our health and well-being, but we can also be thinking about the health and well-being of our business. So stay tuned. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Hi, James.
Hi there.
Hi. So we're going to be talking about, well, I don't know what we're talking about. We'll just see where the conversation takes us.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Yeah. Actually, we're going to be talking about coronavirus and security. But before we get to that, tell me a little bit about how you got into security.
Sure. I've been involved in information technology for, oh my goodness, many years. And probably with the advent or the proliferation of mobile devices years ago, maybe 20 years ago, BlackBerries, that sort of thing, I saw really a need for security as far as how are we securing these devices based on what type of data is on these devices, that sort of thing. And back then, I actually had gone for a security certification called CISSP, which is a Certified Information Systems Security Professional.
Mm-hmm.
And that was years ago. And of course, as time went on, and there was cloud and collaboration tools and that sort of thing, it just really exploded into a field upon itself. Mm-hmm. So again, I started off purely in IT, whereas I've sort of gone down the purely information security type of path. But it's been a long time, and it's quite the ride.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
That's how you started. Your humble beginnings started with
absolutely. That's right. Humble beginnings. Absolutely.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about before we jumped into coronavirus and all that is a lot of mid-market companies, they don't have a chief information security officer, and that's your title. Right. You're actually Consilien's Virtual Chief Information Security Officer.
Sure.
They might have a small IT team, a director of IT. Can you tell us what's the difference between having a CISO versus having a director of IT, and maybe why you might want to consult with a CISO?
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, a CIO typically works on the business management side of the organization. It's really internally and operationally focused on all their tasks. So they're sort of purely on the IT side as far as policy development, standard operating procedures, training, resourcing, that sort of thing. The CISO, or the Chief Information Security Officer, focuses, again, it's very much on the security side, but also cyber risk, cyber intelligence, security architecture, focused in that area, program management, access management, security operations. If there are breaches, very often CISOs involve themselves in disaster recovery and backup contingency plans, things along those lines. So there's a whole range as far as different types of things that a CISO can do or does do in different companies, but those are really the majors. I mean, there's also things like emergency response,
right?
Information assurance and cyber insurance and things like that. So there are a multitude of areas that involve the CISO's responsibilities, core responsibilities, as well as touching upon other areas like legal and privacy and things along those lines, compliance and those areas as well.
Okay, that's good to know, because I think that a lot of businesses, they're really relying heavily on their director of IT to know how to do everything that you just talked about.
Sure, which is not possible. I mean, the reality is generally an IT director is someone who has sort of general knowledge in a lot of different IT type areas, but they just don't have the proper training and the expertise to deal with, like I said, breaches and compliance and risk assessments and things along those lines.
Right. Well, that's good to know. So with the coronavirus, and the reason why I wanted to talk to you about this, I know it might be a little far out. It's in the news.
Right.
I know that there's a lot of phishing campaigns targeted at employees and at individuals about, hey, here's a map of the coronavirus in your city. If you want to donate, if you here and give us your email credentials. So we know that that's going on.
Sure.
So I'm curious if there's anything else that business owners should be looking at,
Right.
not
Right.
just from the, HR side, but, what if the kids' schools closed? They've been talking.
Sure. Sure. Well, there's actually a few questions that you bring up there. So first of all, it could be coronavirus. It could be anything else. Whenever there's something in the news that's hot, right now, of course, it's coronavirus. It used to be SARS or earthquakes or things along those lines. Basically, what happens is there are tons of targeted attacks or phishing. Phishing emails get sent out to people, or spear phishing, like directly addressing certain folks. Where basically, they want contributions, or they want you to click on links, things along those lines. The proliferation of these types of emails happen, in particular phishing emails, happens all the time. It's one of these things you just can't get away with it. The bad guys know this, and they know that people, when they see emails like this, they're going to open them up right away. So it's human nature. So you have to understand, you've got to be skeptical of an email that says, click on this link, or this is really important, or it's really urgent, things along those lines. You have to be very skeptical. So, there are certain key things that you need to do when you get one of these types of emails is, for example, you shouldn't be taken in just by the name. Or, for example, this is from the, coronavirus, whatever, the CDC, for example.
Right.
The
Yeah.
CDC, again, first of all, they're typically not going to be sending you emails anyways, but you have to be skeptical of these sort of things. So, look for grammatical errors. Look for spelling mistakes. Look for example, very often there's a link or a URL that's embedded in the email. When you hover your mouse over it and you take a look at it, right away, you can see it's not from, www.cdc.com. You can see some other link in there, which it's bad. If it asks you for passwords, banking information, things along those lines, ignore it. You shouldn't be, just hit delete. Things along the lines of ensure that you have what's called multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication enabled on your accounts so that you don't fall prey to these sort of things. I mean, there's a host of other things. Just looking at these emails as time goes on, you train yourself into what looks like, again, it comes down to awareness training.
Right.
You have to understand what it is to look at, to say, hey, this is a bad email, or I really shouldn't be clicking on this sort of thing.
Right. And we do have the security awareness training at Consilien. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the reality is, awareness training, or when companies get breached, I don't know the exact number, it was something like 83 or 87% of all companies are breached via phishing. It's user awareness training is without a doubt the most important control that you would need in order to protect the company. Now, to go on the other aspect, you mentioned coronavirus. Now, coronavirus, besides the whole phishing side, this could be, of course, a catastrophe as far as you might have employees, that are sick, that can't work, or you might have employees where their children, can't go to school, so they have to work from home, things along those lines. So now this raises a whole other slew of issues or, potential problems for a business in that, first of all, you have to ensure that, first of all, if they can work, again, assuming they're not ill or anything like that, if people can work, they have to have a method by which they can work, meaning they'd have to have what's called VPN access, which is a virtual private network. So a way to connect to the company's network such that they can have access to the files that they need or the systems that they need. And of course, if you're granting people these types of access rights, you have to ensure you have the proper policies in place, the proper controls in place, the proper access controls. Certain people, are they allowed to access the environment or the systems? Do they have the right elevation of access rights, things like that? Or you might have situations where people might want to work, from a Starbucks, for example. If you're working from a Starbucks, again, and remember, if you're on their network, you don't know what's going on in their network.
Security
malicious activity. Again, ensure that you have VPN access. VPN would protect you, or at least help protect you when you're to connect to the company's network. Okay. Now, obviously, if this is widespread, where coronavirus is everywhere and people are becoming infected, this is of course a far worse issue. This is becomes it's a pandemic, that sort of thing. Now you get into the realm of a business continuity planning.
Mm-hmm.
So businesses have to take a look and do what's called impact analysis or impact assessments. They have to come up with recovery plans. I mean, that's of course a much larger scale type thing, but they need to have
for any
process.
catastrophe. Yeah.
Yeah. There have to be processes in place to address these sort of things when you have less staff or people working remotely, that sort of thing. So there are a lot of things that can be done to provide a business with this sort of capability, or to plan for these types of situations. We're used to things like, or at least in California, Southern California, earthquakes, for example. There's a lot of training around that. Not so much disease control or things along those lines.
Right.
But you have to make assumptions. Which employees are required for the business? Which ones are not so required? Which ones can you do without for a certain period of time? How long can systems be down for? Things like that. So you have to plan accordingly for those sort of things.
Oh, that's really good information. I mean, it's good in general, not just for this, but these kinds of things just bring security and, into the forefront of everyone's mind.
Absolutely.
That's really good.
Absolutely.
If a business wanted to engage with a CISO, would it be because they need compliance? How do they know that they need to engage with you?
Well, it's tough. I mean, the thing is this, people very often will say to me, how do I know if my environment's been breached, or how do I know if I'm secure? And, I'm not sure. The reality is there are two types of companies in the world. There are those that have been breached, and there are those that don't yet know that they've been breached. I mean, that's the reality, okay?
Right.
So you have to ensure that you've got the proper controls in place to lock your environment down tightly. Now, let's just be clear. It's impossible to be 100% secure.
Right.
If that was the case, you wouldn't have the CIA getting breached and, the Pentagon and Google and, the large companies, that sort of thing. So the reality is you have to put enough controls in place such that the bad guys say, whoa, you know what? It's not worth my time. I'm going to go elsewhere. I mean, that's kind of the reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are always cost implications and, timing and resourcing and that sort of thing. So you need someone who can look at the environment holistically and take a look and say, okay, you're lacking process, or you're lacking technology, or you're lacking people. This is what I recommend you do, or to even help do whatever needs to be done in a company. Because the reality is most companies are either not secure, they don't realize they need to be secure, or they see in the news this company's been breached, this credit card information, or personally, PII type information has been released into the public, and it raises the awareness, hey, wait a minute, I've got to do this. And now the government has some teeth, because now there are certain laws. In Europe, they have what's called GDPR that came into effect. In California, you have CCPA. These are privacy laws basically designed to protect consumer data. And if this data is lost, the fines are monstrous. So it's putting the onus on the business to ensure that they're protected. So again, they need to have people with the appropriate level of knowledge, such that they realize exactly where the gaps are, what needs to be done to protect. Basically, it comes down to protecting data. That's the bottom line.
I like that. So I've been thinking about this. It's a diagram on here. I'll just draw it for you. I'll draw it for you and everybody else.
Okay.
You can help me with it. So businesses want to be the most secure they can be, right?
Right.
And then this is the cost, but they want to be the most secure with the least cost, the least amount of cost, if this is the least, and this is the most.
Right.
I was thinking that the most expensive, but the most secure would be to have your own in-house team, your own in-house, like your own CISO, your own InfoSec team.
But that's a loaded question, right? It's a loaded question, because are they appropriately trained? Do they have the right skill set? Sometimes it's better to outsource to a company that's what they do. Right. They do security, right? So a lot of the larger organizations, I don't want to say names, but some of the big players out there, they focus on, let's say, entertainment, or they focus on, whatever, finance. But their strength isn't necessarily IT or security or anything like that. Right. So very often they outsource it to companies that is their strength.
Right.
Different companies have different requirements. It could even be a hybrid type system. They might have some folks in-house who maybe direct the overall program.
Right.
And then those people that are outsourced, that are the wrench turners, quote unquote, doing the actual day-to-day type of work. So there's really no one specific solution. Every company should have a different type of solution, or a different potential solution.
I actually think that's the most cost-effective solution.
You know what? Generally, it is.
You're more secure, and then you're over here in the most
Absolutely. As time goes on, people are realizing, see, if you go back in the old days, and of course, if you're talking IT, the old days, let's say 20 years ago, where everyone wanted to build, for example, their own data center, okay? That's all outsourced now.
Right.
Everything was on premise, all your servers and everything. Well, now everything's in the cloud, okay? So you're relying on the Googles and the the Amazons of the world to store that data and house that data and provide you with computing power and all that, because that's their strength, that's their expertise. And you're paying sort of, it's like CapEx and OpEx type costs.
Right.
You know you're paying X dollars per month and you're getting a service from those people that know exactly how to do what it is that you want.
Yeah.
So again, I would never say to you, you should always go with an in-house. That's just, it's not cost effective these days.
Right.
It's not. And again, at the same time, I'm not necessarily stating everything should be outsourced. That might not be the proper solution, but very often a hybrid solution is the best for a company.
What would be the most expensive but the least secure? Yeah. So, right, here's the most expensive but the least secure.
Well, I would say, I mean, that's a tough question. I mean, I would say it's building absolutely everything in-house by people who just weren't security people.
Right.
See, the problem is this. IT, quote unquote, IT people and security people very often don't think the same way, okay? Security guys historically been known as, no, they say no, you can't do that, no. The IT folks will do whatever they can to get the job done such that it serves the business, okay? And that's great.
Yeah.
The reality is there's got to be a happy medium, right? There's got to be a middle ground between them both, okay? So you can't have one person always saying no and the other person basically always saying yes. There has to be a middle ground. So as time goes on, you're getting a lot of security guys that are kind of wear both hats. They understand the business has a certain need, and yet there are certain requirements that you have to abide to. So you'd want to work with the business, right? You want to be, I mean, I don't want to use the term like team player, but I mean, you want to be an enabler. You want to help the business such that they don't just look at security purely as, they're going to slow me down.
Right.
I can't deal with security. I'm going to go around security and I'm going to do something because they're just going to slow me down. And that's the way it was in the past.
Yeah.
And that, that's something as time goes on, hopefully, we're really trying to avoid that type of situation.
That's great. Well, thank you. I can talk to you, for hours and hours. So we'll do this.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and we'll talk about incident response planning. How about that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. You take care.